Dad, all of these folks are here today as we celebrate with you your upcoming 80th birthday. We want to have well, I know we're going to have a good day with the Lord because have you looked that way if you've been outside? Have you looked outside? Thank you all that's come. And I hope you enjoy this day with us as much as we're going to enjoy it and as much as I hope you're going to enjoy it.
Right.
80 years.
Don't seem like
And you've been up here how long?
that's 40, what year?
46?
48. Pretty close to 48.
Yep, 'cause I'm 50 and I was 3 when we came here. So we're getting close there, ain't we?
We are.
And like the rest of you, I was a lot younger when we first come here. I don't want nobody out. But we're glad, like Mom said, we're glad to have Brother Jerry, his daughter and grandchildren. And we sure miss Sister Wilma being here with us, but we know she's happy in heaven today. And
Yes.
Brother Goforth and his family back there, Jack. Sarah, good to see you. It's Betty's daughter. I know a lot of you know that, and granddaughter. And I'll have to get my glasses on. We've got some folks visiting back here. Thank you for coming. And they're still walking in.
That's good.
At least I see more of your grandchildren coming in. Why? Nothing like being on the spotlight, is there, lady? But we want to celebrate today, and I'm going to start out. I've got, yes. I've got a few memories I'm going to bring up. And by the way, toward the end of the service, if anybody, any of the church members, has a memory, you know, even if it was Dad being there in your time of need, or just a moment, or a happy moment, and it might be a sad moment that Dad's been there, we want you to maybe get up and raise your hand today and say something about it, okay? So let's get started. Let's enjoy today. I'm going to start out with some memories. There's only a few people in this world that can say that they have a pastor, and that pastor is their dad. So my preacher is also my dad, and not many people can say that. And he's been my pastor all my life. All my life. I was thinking of a few things to kind of bring up, try to honor you. And I go all the way back to Key Street when we first was there, and him teaching me to ride my bicycle. How many of you remember that parking lot at Key Street? It was all gravel. It was downhill. Well, he'd take me up to the top of that hill right at the road, and he would just kind of, well, he'd walk beside me for a little bit, you know, and I'd go down that hill, and he'd walk beside me again, I'd go down that hill, until I finally went down that hill by myself. And that was a memory I shared with him there at Key Street, and remember being a child. I also remember riding in his lap when we lived at Key Street. Up Key Street Hill, he'd come in from work, and he had an old white Ford Falcon. Anybody remember Dad driving that old white Ford Falcon? It was just an extra vehicle. Well, I'd meet him down at the bottom of the hill. You know, that was the safe days. And I was in kindergarten then. Walk from the house down past Sister Mary's and stand and wait on him. Get in the car, he'd put it on his lap, and I'd steer it up Key Street. And y'all know they let us drive on Cunningham Road, all three of us, when we was in middle school. Another thing that sticks out in my mind is, and I guess I inherited it too, but to be watching a TV show or a real nice family movie, And maybe in that movie you see a child, and that child loses his parent in that show. And Dad would just cry. He gets touched with moments like that. Still to this day, if there's a sad scene, Dad will just tear up, and you'll just see him tears rolling. Especially with children not losing a parent, it really seemed to get to him.
Right.
One of the highlights they had on a Saturday morning at Key Street was they were still asleep, and that's back in the days when I would get up real early.
Yeah.
And that's a long time ago. I was walking around the neighborhood over behind Sister Mary's house and saw something curled up in the road. So I ran back to the house and got me a jar. And I went back to what was curled up in the road. It was all curled up, and it was a snake. And I put that snake in that jar, put the lid on it, come back to the house, walked into Mom and Dad's room and said, "Look what I found." How would you like to wake up to that scene?
Lord, that was
The important part of this story, the snake was dead. But they didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now, Mother is not a fan of having a lot of animals around the house. But somehow Dad would convince her, and we sure had our share. Rabbits, dogs, puppies, even had a goat once. Got it from a guy at work, come home on break to check on it. Had to chase it all over the neighborhood because I didn't know then they could jump fences. And I was on my break, chased that thing all over the neighborhood. Me and Dad built a rabbit house. We had some used materials. That little white rabbit was about that big. That house was bigger than this pulpit. But we built it out in the backyard.
I think some of those things need to be off.
Oh, this is one of those, when you get 80, it's all, take apart the door, here we go. But the good part about that rabbit house, it later became a dog house. And we had this little puppy, little dog we called Bandit. And that became Bandit's dog house. And we come home one evening. Bandit turned out to be a girl. And there was puppies all over the backyard. Late puppies all over the backyard. Nowhere near the house. And we went and gathered up them puppies and brought them to her. Well, one thing, in Dad's backyard, if you've ever seen it, I know Gary has seen it, and Jacob's seen it. It's just, and she had kind of laid them on that hillside, but she'd lay them and they'd roll. They'd roll down the hill, so we had to go gather one. Oh, Lordy.
Tell about the dog house.
Well, the doghouse was the rabbit house, wasn't it?
You wouldn't even go in.
Yeah, she wouldn't even go in it. She probably thought it was too big. And I know this next thing, this is just being a parent, but I still remember this, even when Dad lost his father. Me as a child, being able to console me at the funeral when he was going through probably the heavier grief, because that was his daddy. But he put his arms around me as I cried. It's over.
Right.
And one thing that I'll never forget, and this church will never forget, is when we lost little Amy Inscourt.
Right. Yeah.
Not only losing her in that funeral, I still have a vivid memory of what home life was during that time with him. I still remember him standing up here, preaching at the funeral of that she was 3 years old.
Yeah.
And I still remember him having a migraine, because it was grief-stricken migraine. I still remember him setting a trash can up here. You may not have known that. He had a trash can behind the pulpit because he was scared he was going to get sick. He was that sick in grief. when he performed that little girl's funeral.
All right.
Another thing that sticks out is not only seeing the preacher, but seeing the dad. When you yourself lost a loved one. We've been here so long that we do seem like family.
Yeah, we do this.
And just seeing the emotions that he, this is his day, but, mom included, but this is his day. But seeing the emotions that they go through and the grief they go through and how they hate to lose somebody and how they do pray for you when you lose somebody. One thing that you could count on from Dad, you could call him at 20 to 3 and say, I need one of the boys picked up. And I don't know what he was doing then, but he'd be there at 3 o'clock and get him. He never turned us down. He never turned Mike down, Jacob and Lydia and JR. And numerous times he babysat them. Those free babysitters. Sister Mary, you know what that's like, don't you? Those free babysitters. I'll never forget that. They were always there for our children. And they still are.
Right, right.
And I guess, last but not least, is how he has treated my life like a daughter.
Amen.
He's loved her like his own. Still loves her like his own.
Yes, I do that.
And that's who my dad is. And y'all know that. But I just felt it important to bring out some of those points. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to sing him a song.
So anyway, as you gather, Dad had no clue I was here.
Nope.
And Mom kept calling off and on yesterday, and we're going here, and I'm gonna drive down this road. You be careful so we don't see you. We're going here, we're going here. So she was dictating which way I needed to go. I wrote down a few memories, and those of you who have Facebook know that I'm terrified of birds and owls. This is the reason. All of my friends post owl pictures to me all the time, and I hate them. But when I was in elementary school, because being the animal lover that I am, I got off the bus one day. Dad always took me to school. And as you can tell, we had to go by Hardee's every morning and get breakfast. And I was trained that way, and I think I still do that. But anyway, I rode the bus home in the afternoons, and Dad met me in the driveway, and he said, "Go look what I got in that trash can over there." So I walk over, I get close, I take the lid off, and he comes behind me and says, "And it's gonna peck your eyes out." It was a little bird that was hurt. As soon as I took that lid off, it started jumping around. So Anthony told the sweet sides of Dad. I know more of the mischievous sides of Dad. And I'm not afraid to tell some of them.
You can get by with it.
I'm not sure of exact ages, but as a young boy plowing opposite his brother in Mississippi, one would be going this way, one would go the other. Dad would pick up a clod of dirt and throw it. They'd stop plowing, fight, roll around all over the yard, come back. When they'd meet, they'd do it all over again. They talk about how Granddaddy made them work all the time. I think it's because they took more time fighting. The work would have probably been done. But back to the owl story, when Dad worked at Kroger, a lot of you will remember that. And I don't even know how many years he'd been there. And one night, he wanted me to go to Kroger and get something. And Becky Fletcher, before she passed away, she was with me, and we went up to Kroger, and we were walking, and all of a sudden I stopped dead in my tracks. And I said, "I am not fixing to go in that store." So we got back in the car and left. And I went home, and Dad said, "Where's my stuff?" And I said, "I got it there." And on that Kroger sign, there's a big owl sitting in that Jeep. Dad said, "Well, you dummy, you walked past it for years. They put it up there to keep birds from building nests." That's how bad my fear of birds is. And then when I got my first car, nothing would do me but to get a straight shift. I had to have a straight shift. Would still love to have one, but in Atlanta that don't work too well. But Dad and I went. I don't know where Mom was. That happened a lot. But we went and test drove this little gray Chevette. A lot of y'all remember that was my first car, other than the Monte Carlo that was actually Mom's. So we were test driving. It's back before the salesman rode with you. We drove all over Bristol. We get on Sullivan's Hill, and I had to stop. And I was rolling backwards. And I don't know if Dad remembers or not, but I pulled the emergency brake. I got out of the car, and I said, "Get this car off this hill." So we drove it a little while, and even still, with me not being able to do that, I wanted it. Dad made a way. He called Mom and said, "We're going to trade your car. We need you to come down here and sign this paper." And she did. And then Dad had a nice surprise for me. He said, "Well, it's yours now. You did it the best way you know how." So I learned how to drive straight really quickly. I did break it. But I didn't hit anybody. But I did total that car. After I'd been in 2 wrecks in 2 weeks, you remember that? Yeah, but do you remember the one 2 weeks before when I was riding in a car? Same policeman working both wrecks. But some of the other memories with that, and I don't know if you recognize Monica. Yes, Dawn back here. I'm not sure if Dawn even remembers this, but when Erin, her little girl, was just tiny, not even old enough to know what a dollar bill was, we had her back here, and you asked her for a hug, and she wouldn't come to you. You pulled $1 out of your pocket and that baby jumped in your arms. So she knew, we didn't even think she was old enough to know $1. She learned early on. You taught her well.
But you never would have got that out.
Dad and I always went walking in the snow. So when it snows in Georgia now, I don't have anybody to go walking with me, but it doesn't snow very often down there. I think our last walk was the big blizzard here, when all the transformers were popping and we went walking and Dad didn't want me to panic, but he said, I think we better get home. Trees were falling everywhere, transformers were popping all over town. But I guess my favorite and the story that, oh no, I forgot. I don't think Mom knows this. I was in college. And, Mom's not an animal lover, for those of you who don't know it. She wouldn't hurt one, but she don't want one. So, when I was in college, Dad came home one day and he said, I need you to go to church with me. So we got in the car and we headed out through here. We come back to this little building and there were 3 little kittens back there. You found them on a fence post coming around in and through. So Dad rescued them and I had to find homes for them because we knew Mom wouldn't let us have them. But there's where my animal love came in. And this morning, just for you, I don't know if you remember back when I was in high school, I'd be getting ready and you'd come and say, you spend more time making your hair look like you haven't been combed. So in your honor today, I did that again. I just messed it up.
Good to me.
But this will be the last, but contrary to popular belief, I don't tell everything I know. But used to when I was younger, I'd wait till Dad would be in the bed all rushed to sleep. Were you asleep? No. I'd go in and I'd turn the CD player on. And I'd get one of Dad's suit jackets and I'd put it on his arm. And I'd get one of Mom's flowery house coats and I'd put it on this arm and I'd turn on Howard and Vestal. And when Howard was singing, I'd turn the suit side to Dad. And when Vestal was singing, I'd turn the Vestal side to Dad. And it didn't matter if it was 1, 2, 3 in the morning. He enjoyed his concerts. So y'all just don't know on Sunday morning what he's been through at home when he comes in here.
Y'all need to give her a hand for that.
But when you're told that you had stage 4 cancer with 3 months to live, you sure are glad to know you've got a praying Mom and Daddy at a church behind you that can get on with it. And for those of you who may not know, as of February, I was declared cancer-free.
Yes. What do you think about that surprise?
That was wonderful. I didn't know, I had no idea. I really didn't, folks. They kept that one from me.
This church has known this since one of the times you was sick and couldn't be here. I think I first told you about January, didn't I? That on this day we was going to celebrate your birthday. You don't feel like you're 80, do you?
No.
He will be officially 80 on Tuesday. Well, I've got a thing to read here